care, lead, innovate, motivate, balance. These 5 tenets reveal ways of creating a more profitable and customer-centric pharmacy. What will you discover when you climb with RMS?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Climb. I'm Brad Jones, the CEO and founder here at Retail Management Solutions, and my pleasure to welcome you to the final climb of 2021. With me today, as always, my co-host, our Director of Operations, Brandon Bolesky. Good morning, Brandon.
Good morning, Brad.
Can you believe it? It's holiday season is upon us. This is the final climb of the year.
Came up pretty fast. Seems to usually, but this one especially. Yeah. It's good to be, entering the holiday season, but a little bit more time in the year would be nice too.
Yeah. And a crazy season for the retailers and for our pharmacies. So not that this hasn't been a crazy year or 2 years at this point, but this just makes it extra crazy, I guess, the holiday season. So today we have a few things coming up in Climb. And so there's a reminder to everybody, the acronym, you should be familiar with it by now: care, lead, innovate, motivate, and balance. That's what Climb is all about. We've been doing this for now over a year, and we really are just having a lot of fun with it. And I think we hear from our attendees that they're having a lot of fun with it as well and learning a lot. So we really appreciate you all attending, and we're happy to have you back. So Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about last month's Climb for those that missed it?
Sure. Yeah. So last month we talked about resources to help you make the most out of your holiday season by increasing foot traffic. If you missed those presentations, Dr. Lisa Fost, Aislinn O'Toole with Google, Matt Kerper with Giftya, they're all available on our YouTube channel and on our website in the Climb library. Now, even though those tips were centered around the holiday season, they could still be put to use in pharmacies throughout the year. So definitely give them a look if you haven't seen them already. Now, this month, we'll be talking about a couple different ways to optimize pharmacy business in 2022. Brad will be talking about some year-end reporting that can help you make informed decisions about your front end in the new year, and sharing how all that works within the RMS system as well during our After Climb segment. But before we get to that, we're going to kick off our December Climb with a special segment on buying groups. Brad, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think it's important that buying groups are playing such an important role today, in what pharmacies do. And there are a number of different types of buying groups. So over the course of the next few months, we're going to be interviewing and talking to panelists representatives from different buying groups. And today we're talking to 2 different buying groups, what are referred to as Buying Group Cooperatives. So with me today, in just a moment, I'm going to bring on the VP of Sales from AAP and also the VP of Sales from APCI. So I'll have them in just a moment. In February, we're going to be bringing on representatives from different types of buying groups that aren't cooperatives per se, but are different types, like High School Pharmacy, which is a group of over 100 pharmacies that have their buying power to buy product of all types, front end and pharmaceuticals. And we'll also have a representative from Compliant Pharmacy Alliance, another different type of buying group, and then a couple of others that we're talking to as well to bring on, just to give everybody a full, clear picture of what's out there and what might work best for your pharmacy. So without further ado, we'll bring up the screen showing our next panelists, and I'll be back with them in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. This is our first session for the day, and I'm excited to have a couple of gentlemen from a couple of different buying groups. From AAP, I have Wayne Bass, who's the Vice President of Sales, and then from APCI, I have Mark Million, who's also the Vice President of Sales. Gentlemen, welcome to Climb, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So I use this term buying group. We hear buying groups, group purchasing organizations, buying cooperatives. Are they the same? What's the difference? Can one of you tell me or tell us what the difference is?
Sure,
Go
I'll
ahead.
start. No problem. So yeah, there are differences in them. AAP is a buying group. We're a cooperative, a buying cooperative, and all any profits of the organization go back to our members at the end of the year in the form of a dividend. And so that's a cooperative. There's also just buying groups out there which are formed by it's probably a for-profit organization where somebody has formed a group, and any of the profits those organizations keep internally because they are privately owned. And then there's other groups that call themselves a buying group that might be just 5, 10, 15 store owners that will get together and negotiate a deal with probably a wholesaler most likely formed around that arena as just a group. And there may or may not be any dollars that flow through that organization, but they do consider themselves a buying group. So there are different little distinctions there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with Wayne. I mean, I tend to use them, the GPO, the buying group cooperative interchangeably. APCI is a true cooperative as well. Our members buy stock in APCI, so they own the company, and then they can earn dividends, based on their generic purchases through the wholesaler.
Okay. So, so there's a handful, or are there a lot of buying groups in the U.S. then, or?
Yeah, there are too many buying groups,
Yeah,
Brad.
there's a lot.
There's way too many groups, and we're too fractured. We're too fragmented. The number of times and over my 28 years I've been involved in this industry that I've heard pharmacy owners say, "Hey, we all need to get together. We all need to get together and do something. Negotiate with the wholesaler, get together and start a PBM, or get together and negotiate against the PBMs or whatever the case may be." They all say we need to get together, but we practice fragmentation. We talk about consolidation, but we practice fragmentation. And even from our own organization, the number of times we've had groups of pharmacies split off, and I'm going to go do my own thing. We're going to take 10 stores, and we're going to do our own thing. And man, just recently I counted up somewhere around 55 groups that I could think of that are organized out there in some fashion. And then there's a whole bunch of other groups they're not legally organized probably, but we have too many groups, and we need to stop that. We need to consolidate. I don't know what that right number is. It might be 10, might be 12.
Might be 2.
Might be 2.
Well, it's really buying power. It's hard to have a lot of buying power when you're that fragmented, I guess. That's becomes a huge issue, really.
Right.
Well, and I think
20,000. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Wayne.
There's 25,000 pharmacies still out there, independents out there, and we're all still just fragmented. Sorry, Mark.
Right.
Well, and I think you're going to see, we've seen tremendous consolidation in the wholesale drug industry, the regionals, the independents. The buying group segment, we haven't seen that type of consolidation, although there has been some, but I do think you're going to see, more consolidation in the next, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be.
Well, and I think that's an interesting thing because as we were talking earlier, I was in that part of the industry earlier in my career in the wholesale side, and I was the vice president of a independent drug wholesalers group, which is was a co-op of 68 of the 72 independent drug wholesalers in the early 90s. And of course, virtually all of those wholesalers have been gobbled up. I mean, there's very few independent wholesalers left. And I think, I know that this happened because of buying power in the end. They couldn't compete, and they can't compete. It's very difficult to compete, say it that way, today for some kind of a small wholesaler. So that makes sense. What, do you have any feel for what percentage of pharmacies are part of a buying group?
And I think Wayne said earlier, maybe, 90% plus. I agree. I think the vast majority are part of a buying group. They do see the advantage, the benefits of being part of a group. It's a good question. I don't know that, I don't know the answer, but I would guess it's north of 90% easily.
Yeah.
So Wayne, you mentioned, even though there's 90% that are a part of a buying group, the buying groups vary dramatically. So let's talk about the types of services and functions that the both of you see with your organization, what you offer, the benefits you offer, and that you think buying groups should be offering their customers. Let's start with you, Mark.
Well, our main function is to support our members, pure and simple. We have a saying: we like to offer a solution from the moment a member flips on his lights in the morning to locking the door that night. Any issue that he faces, we want to have a solution for. We want to have industry experts. We want to have staff members that can address and correct, whatever issues they find. And also, we love the wholesalers, but, it's never a bad thing to have additional checks and balances on the wholesaler. Just another set of eyes and ears, making sure everything's being done the way that it's supposed to.
Okay. Wayne, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As a group as we are, and as Mark and APCI are, we do take admin fees from the wholesaler, and that's what we run our organization on. And so we need to bring value back to our pharmacies for those. So what are those value adds, back to the organization? I think that's what everybody needs to look at their buying group and saying, okay, I'm part of this group. I'm part of this group for something.
Okay. So, I mean, what are some of the problems that you are solving? Mark, you mentioned some problems that you helped them solve. What are some of those problems?
Well, we used to have our own PSAO, and we merged with Access Health and formed HMA Health Mart Atlas. So, and again, it's a problem because it's so complex, but we're a mediator, between the member and the PSAO. There's always going to be issues that arise, whether you're chasing money, chasing claims, whatever the case may be. So that mediation between the pharmacy and the PSAO, is a big benefit, I think, of what buying groups can offer. Reconciliation, is everybody reconciling their claims? We would argue they should be. We have a reconciliation service that members can take advantage of. Audits are still a big problem. We've got audit services, try to prevent and then try to chase and retain the money that they're chasing, trying to come after.
Yeah, and I think data too is a big part of what things that we're helping our pharmacies with is data mining and understanding what that information is they have in their own pharmacy systems and using them, showing them how to use that to benefit the pharmacy, increase their profits from that direction. There's huge opportunity there for pharmacies that they don't get, and I totally agree with you on the PSAO arena, the buy side. We also have our own distribution, our own warehouse, and even though we do have that, there's often times where we tell our pharmacies to not buy from us. It's the best interest to buy everything from the wholesaler. There's other times where we tell them, hey, it does benefit you to buy from our warehouse. So giving them that kind of advice, giving them that kind of bottom line advice where, hey, it's your benefit. We're doing stuff for your benefit, your bottom line, not for the organization, not for the group.
So let me delve a little deeper into that. What types of products are you carrying in your warehouse? Do you carry some front end merchandise, or is it all pharmaceutical?
Yeah, very little front end. Most all of it's pharmaceutical. We carry about 2,000 generic items, a couple hundred branded items, and we buy all those directly from the manufacturer on the generics. And so we only buy items where we know we can save our pharmacy money. We're not just going to bring product in just to say, hey, we got product on the shelf. If we find an opportunity in the market where there's price where we can bring it in and get a good rebate to the pharmacy, we'll stock that. So our pharmacies know if it's in the warehouse, purchase it from that direction. But again, we're only going to do that if that's what makes sense for the pharmacy. It's really, really important for the pharmacies to understand this outside buying. I think everybody's gotten a little transactional. I shouldn't say a lot transactional over the last several years with reimbursements and everything. If they lose money on a prescription, right away they're going to go look to see if they can buy that product someplace else, and you can get yourself in quite a quagmire with your own prime vendor agreement with your wholesaler you've got if you do too much of that based upon trying to win every transaction. You just can't do that. It just can't do that anymore.
Yeah, there's a fine line, no question about it, no question.
So for those that aren't using a buying group like yours, what are the key differences at a pharmacy that isn't leveraging a buying group like yours? What were some of the key differences they would experience in their ordering experience?
Well, I would argue they're probably not buying as well as they could be by being part of a GPO. And I would argue, standing alone, facing, the PBM pressures, the audit pressures, you just are putting a tremendous hardship on yourself trying to do, everything for yourself on an island instead of, hitching your wagon to a group and getting all the resources, the benefits, the value, that we try to bring to our members.
Yeah, there's some of those day-to-day things, as Mark mentioned earlier, just helping the pharmacy through. There's issues always with a wholesaler, no matter who you have. You need to have a primary wholesaler, and sometimes all of our role is simply is going to the wholesaler and finding, hey, what you're being told by your wholesaler is correct, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it's enforcing an agreement or digging deeper for them. A lot of times we are just that second point of go-to. Hey, this is what maybe I've got a new rep, a very inexperienced representative from the wholesaler, and they don't know things about the industry. Well, they can come to us. We can go to other people in the organization, get the answer, get the problem solved. Those kind of things, I think, is a big part that we take off of their shoulders. There's so many owners out there that are, well, hey, they're independents. And I've always said about, the co-op, whether it was United Drugs I was with before we merged and created AAP or AAP, that the greatest thing about us is we're a co-op of independent pharmacies. And the worst thing about us is we're a co-op of independent pharmacies. Independents are independent, right? And they're going to do things because, they're independent minded. But a lot of times too, they'll have the attitude of, I don't want to deal with the big three wholesalers. And you're really not, as being part of a group. You're dealing with the cooperative. You're dealing with the buying group. You're not dealing directly with the big three wholesaler. You're dealing with a smaller organization that can fight on your behalf.
Well, and I think that's, I talk to independent pharmacists, part of my job. I talk all the time to independent pharmacists, of course, just like the two of you. And, they're overwhelmed. I mean, I think that's it. They feel overwhelmed with everything that's going on. So it seems to me having groups like yours that have their back, that can help them through some of these things, the different fees, the chargebacks, the audits, all of those things that are happening makes a lot of sense. So what are some of the additional services that groups like yours offer?
Well, I think you can't minimize personal relationships. I think, and Wayne would agree, just having people that your members know, they know they can pick up the phone, they know they're going to be accessible, and they're going to get the answer to the questions they have is, you just can't put a price tag on that. The PSAO help, the audit recon we've talked about, clinical services. I mean, we got to generate non-dispense revenue. I mean, with the declining reimbursements, everything we're facing there that we talked about, you've got to have clinical programs in place and try to, replace some of the losses. We're trying to do that, obviously. The business expertise. Some members some independent pharmacy owners run a fantastic business. Some, I think they would, be the first in line. Yep, I need some help. I didn't learn this in pharmacy school, whatever the case may be. So, we try to give them that business expertise and help them run a better business. Front end, some are discounting the front end, writing it off. We don't think that's the way to go. A circular program, a dollar program, merchandising, marketing help, and certainly advocacy and representation are so important in this day and time.
I think one of the best compliments I ever got when I walked into one of our member pharmacies and I was waiting to talk to the owner, and one of their front end personnel said, "Hey, Catherine, there's a salesperson here to see you." And she looked up, she goes, "That's not a salesperson. That's my AAP rep." That I'm there to help them with their business, and I'm there to help them, with anything, with any questions. I think Mark mentioned it earlier, with any questions, any needs, anything that's happening within the pharmacy. Quite frequently we're asked questions about programs and services. We have a lot of different vendors that are part of the AAP program. I think we've got over 50 preferred vendors, that we have vetted and their services they provide, and we can direct them pharmacies to, hey, which ones will work best for you, or here, call these 2 or 3 vendors that we have that, and then we also give them referrals. Here, this pharmacy is using this system, they're using that system, they're using this program, and give them that kind of support that you just can't get on your own.
Well, as I was listening to both of you, one of the thoughts that comes to my mind is that there's so much focus on the pharmacy, the prescriptions themselves, but as you were mentioning, Mark, clinical services have become a huge must in pharmacy, and I would totally agree with you that it's a big mistake to write off your front end. you may have to adapt and change your front end. The day for a lot of pharmacies of the huge front end, those days are gone unless you're in rural America. But if you're in an urban setting, that's more convenience, I think, is what we're seeing. But to write it off is to throw away revenue that has a pretty high profit margin. And so I think some focus there is still very, very important. One of the things that we've talked a lot about in Climb is drug-induced nutrient depletion recommendations because of the high profitability. And one of the things that we're seeing, Amazon is here and it's real. And yes, they can't deliver same day in most places across America and probably won't be able to anytime really soon. But you can, as an independent pharmacy, you can deliver same day. Now, the problem is that if you're only delivering prescriptions, then you added another cost, right? So you really need to be delivering something else, I think, along that way, and starting to get pharmacies to think that way, starting to get pharmacies to look at what they should be and can be delivering along with those prescriptions is an important thing. So I just I just made a long statement, sorry. Got on my soapbox on this one. But are you looking at programs? Do you have programs that deal more with clinical services and front end, looking at the front end of the business?
Well, we do, and I'm sure Wayne does as well. I mean, you look at the chains of the world. How many times do they put a circular in a mailbox during a year? 52 times. So they still see the value, the merit in doing that. We've got a circular program that I would put up against anybody. It's just it's top notch. It's a great circular, and we offer it to members. Once a month is all that we ask them to do it. Again, we understand the chains are doing 52 a year. We're asking them for the commitment to do one a month and drive the traffic back into their store. No question.
Yeah, too many pharmacy owners have given up on the front end and they gave it away. It's not that they somebody took it away from them. They gave it away. They didn't do anything with that front end and not understanding that front end of the business. As you said, Brad, the profitability there. I came up in the chain environment. I came up in working from high school through the chains and through college. Did retail store management for a while, and that front end is always near and dear to me. And too many of our pharmacies, they open the front door, hang a sign up saying I'm a pharmacy, and they just expect people are going to walk in the door, and they don't do enough to promote themselves on bringing pharmacies in. Whether it's COVID, of course, great COVID vaccines and the number of the profits that pharmacies are actually realizing from that have been great, and the traffic into the pharmacies. And that's where they also need to promote their pharmacy when the new patients are coming in. Our members are telling us all the time, I'm seeing these people coming in for vaccines, but they don't get their prescriptions here. Well, what are you doing about it? You give them a coupon, you give them anything to come back. And even prior to COVID, too many pharmacy owners are missing out on that opportunity during, as we are seeing right now with open enrollment. Market yourself as that Medicare resource center and be that place where patients can come in and figure out what's going on. I tell the story all the time. My mom a few years ago, she was going to pick her Medicare plan based upon the ladies at lunch after church, and what one of the daughters said was a plan for their mom, and we were all going to do the same thing. Well, that's not right for you, Mom. I was able to help her through that, but our pharmacies need to take an active role in that, and be that decision place. Every single day a patient is eligible for Medicare. You need to be the place to where that patient's going to go and say, what do I do? And what a great way to attract new business.
Well, and like you say, even during open enrollment, or especially during open enrollment that we're in right now, I mean, you can't turn on the TV without seeing 15 different ads trying to pull these patients away from our independent pharmacies. And yeah, we've got a program, trying to do the exact same thing, hook a member store up with an agent, have that one-on-one personal relationship, and keep these patients in the stores and give them the very best option, where they're taken care of. And Joe Namath and J.J. Walker and all these other guys aren't pulling them away.
Yeah, finding that plan where it's win-win for the patient and win-win for the pharmacy.
Absolutely.
Not leaving the chance. Yeah.
Well, and we did last year about this time. We did a panel with four pharmacies to then how they handle open enrollment, and they were all very progressive in the way that they were, working with their patients. on open enrollment. And so I think it's a really good point. You just can't keep letting these opportunities walk out the door. So the other, I guess the other piece that that you made me think about is just, letting that whole front end walk out the door, and not giving it any attention at all. I talk a lot with pharmacists about, and I did a CE article for America's Pharmacists for NCPA that came out last month in October, and it talked about the front end. And one of the things that pharmacies forget about is that the grocery store really is a huge competitor to them for the front end. And because, back in the day, or in the early days, in the 60s and 70s and even early 80s, grocery just had grocery, and pharmacy had, front end had OTC HBA. And today, of course, grocery has OTC HBA. So you really are competing against the convenience. Everybody has to go to the grocery store at least once a week, typically, right? And so they have that opportunity to buy the things there. And we know that price is not the key in all cases. Price certainly can matter, but convenience can matter just as much. And so one of the things they talk about is the importance of merchandising your product in a very professional but fun, I guess. Give people a reason to look around. End caps, all of those things are very, very important, and I don't think we see enough emphasis on that, today at all in the front end side of the business. I didn't ask this, so I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have any kind of merchandising, programs at all with either one of you?
Yeah, we do. We've got, 4 merchandisers on staff that do go into member stores on a monthly basis and merchandise a section. I talked about our circular program earlier, and more times than not, that merchandiser goes hand in hand with members that are running our circular program, so they can go in and help get that section set, priced, merchandised, everything, correctly, so they're ready to rock and roll when the ad breaks.
Okay. Well, I do think it's a really important piece, and again, that's something that they don't teach in pharmacy school, right? But there's an actual science behind setting an end cap. You really, there's a lot of research that have gone into understanding the importance of end caps, how they work, and compulsive buying. It's, I see this, I need it. So it is really important to have these things within arm's reach. For those of us who shop at Best Buy from time to time, you have to go through the maze to get to the register to pay, and and they've got all this stuff along the way, and that's really common in the chain world. So
well, and Brad, you remind me of something when you said that. We've been wildly successful with the dollar program that we brought to McKesson, and again, the dollar ceiling, I guess, has been broken now with all the supply issues and everything that's going on. But there's still a lot that are at a dollar price point. Some may be $1.19, $1.49, whatever the case may be. But just the excitement and the volume that you can drive, and your store looks full. For a very small investment, you can have 16 foot of a beautiful dollar program, and suddenly it looks like you're back in business. And it does create that excitement. They're going down the aisle, say, "Oh, I didn't know I could get that. Oh, I need that." So, it's just been really successful for us.
Yeah, we've got a planograms program that there's still planograms are set up for for a full size store. And a lot of stores are smaller apothecary stores, and they can't do the full planogram program. But at least the program also lists the items from 1 to whatever how many numbers are in the category, which items you should carry. And it's frightening the number of times when you sign a store up on the program and you see they don't even have the top 10 items in the category. They are not put in the pharmacy. They didn't bring those items in, and just getting them on that program and showing them, hey, there's dollars back. We provide dollars back to our stores too by being part of that program. Just get the right products in there. Big part of it.
Well, and that's absolutely right. It shocks me as well when we do an evaluation with one of our stores and we look at the top selling items and how many they don't have, and then how many of these things that they keep on the shelf that haven't sold in over a year, and not looking at the tools available to them in the reporting. So there's so much focus on that behind the counter, and there's so much focus on inventory turns behind the counter. And of course that makes sense because prescription medications are typically a lot more expensive than front end merchandise, especially the branded stuff, right? And so you can tie up a lot of money in inventory and in the back end, but boy, you can do the same in the front end. It's really surprising how much money people tie up in inventory that isn't turning. And I would have to think that getting $10,000 or $15,000 back in cash flow would be helpful to most independent pharmacies. So so don't tie it up in stuff that doesn't sell.
Yeah. An early lesson I had, Brad, when I was in retail, I was probably still in high school, and I was taking the sale price off of a product on an end cap, and the manager said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, the sale's over." He said, "We didn't sell it at full price. Why are we at the sale price? Why are we going to bring it back to full price? Let's mark it down and let's get rid of it. Let's
Right.
move the product."
Well, and that's a whole nother topic, which I've done. I've also carried last year. One is sunk cost and carrying costs. And, once this, and why the chains do exactly what they do. They put it on, it doesn't sell, they get it out. Eventually they either throw it away or they donate it to charity, but they don't put it in a box and store it in the back room.
Correct.
So that we could spend a long time on that conversation too. That's one near and dear to my heart.
Yep.
Well, listen, Mark, you mentioned something, and I wanted to wanted to address this, and we're going to have to wrap up here in a second. But what are you seeing with the global supply chain? I mean, I know it's disrupting everything. How is it impacting pharmacy?
Yeah, I agree. I think it has absolutely impacted everything. And I may be all wet with this, but my personal opinion, as far as our business goes, seems to have affected OTC. A lot of the HBA items, a lot of the dollar items have been impacted really, really tough to get versus the RX items. And maybe that's because RX is smaller, a whole lot more money, obviously, like we said before. But I do think it's impacted everything. And in my world, it seems to have, really impacted OTC more so than RX.
Yeah, same thing. I'm not hearing much on the RX side, but the DME side, hearing some problems there on the medical equipment side, and some of our stores too with the bigger front ends are saying, "Hey, I've got more holes than I've ever had before," and
Right.
there's just not a source to bring those products in.
Yeah, so I'm in the Seattle area, and it's just amazing to me the number of cargo ships that are just sitting anchored that can't get into port.
Right.
And then I have a friend that's in the shipping industry, and he coordinates cargo all over the world. And he said, you think it's bad here at the port of Los Angeles or Long Beach, there's 120 cargo ships sitting there anchored that can't get in. So it really is. It's a fascinating. It's a terrible situation. It's it's scary, really, what we've uncovered from COVID as a result of this. But anyway, we don't have time to talk about that and solve that problem today. Are there any other things that we didn't cover? And we'll wrap up here in the next couple minutes. So is there anything else that either one of you would like to talk about that I didn't ask about?
I'd just like to mention on the buy side, from when you were talking about the back behind the counter, the prescriptions, the brand generics, there's a lot of drive these days from pharmacy owners to get a lower brand cost of goods, and that just doesn't really, it's all just cost dollar shifting that's going on there. And then too many pharmacy owners are making a decision to switch wholesalers, switch buying groups, chasing a brand cost of goods that it's not all there. It's a huge math problem. Buying pharmaceuticals is a big math problems on the generic side, the brand side, the cost of goods, the discounts, the not discounts, the rebates. And it's really important that they understand all of those parts before they make a decision. And if you don't understand all of those pieces and parts, get with somebody that does, somebody that can really give you that analysis on that. Yeah. It's not just simply, hey, I got a lower brand cost of goods, this is a better deal. And I see too many owners making those decisions, tying themselves up in a 2 or 3 year agreement on something that's not good for their pharmacy, or they're following somebody else's advice who's got a totally different pharmacy. Kind of like my example with my mom and the Medicare Part D is,
Sure.
I'm going to go do what somebody else did because it's right for their pharmacy. Well, every pharmacy is different. Every pharmacy buys different. They all need to know what's best for their pharmacy.
Yeah, I would add, and I know it's cliche, but would be remiss by not mentioning it. You know, we've all heard get into politics or get out of pharmacy. You know, times are really, really tough right now. We all understand that. You know, long-term sustainable change is only going to come from legislative reform. You know, we believe so. Everybody, and we talked about it earlier, you know, how fragmented everything is. The only way we're going to have true change if we're all getting involved, we're all pulling together. You know, we're going to go all in 22, you know, like never before, and try to impact that legislative reform. You know, we'll see, you know, how much impact we can have. But, you know, the point is you can't bury your head in the sand. You can't be behind the counter not willing to do anything else. You got to get involved. That's the only way anything's going to change for all of us.
I couldn't agree more. And you can't just complain.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things, and I'll just make a comment on this, one of the things that makes this change difficult is when you try to describe to people how this really works, they go, nah, there's no way it could be. It's impossible. You're not telling me the whole story. I mean, I've listened to my friends when I've tried to describe this, and they're like, seriously, no way.
You're getting paid less than what you pay for it, getting reimbursed less. Yeah, really. Right.
Yeah. And I think it's so insane that it's an uphill battle to get politicians or people to actually sit down and recognize, no, it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it is insane, and you have to do something about it. So all of us have to get involved and participate in or this change isn't going to happen. So I appreciate that part, Mark. Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for Climb. I really appreciate it, and we'd love to have you back in 2022 at some point.
Sounds great.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Batch multiple prescriptions into a single bag in Will Call. Then scan one barcode at checkout. No forgotten prescriptions, no wasted time, and best of all, Will Call by RMS is crazy easy.
Welcome back, everyone. So in that last presentation, you heard our guest speakers talk towards the end of the presentation about how they feel like many pharmacies are giving up on the front end, and they don't think that's a good idea. And I couldn't agree with them more. The front end is an important, vital portion of your pharmacy where you have complete control, and you can control your profitability on the front end. Even if it's a small front end, it can generate revenue and profitability for your pharmacy overall. Now, last month in October, I wrote an article for America's Pharmacist Magazine. It was a CE credit, and we'll link that at the end of this. And I'm just going to go over a little bit of some of the key topics in this CE credit here for the next few minutes. So let me share my screen. The title of this is Data-Driven Business Decisions, Understanding Your Front End. So let's get to the first slide. So your front end really does matter regardless of size. You know, many of you over the years have had to downsize your front end, and that's fine. We all have to change with the times. We have to change as things change, and certainly we all know pharmacy world has changed dramatically since the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even in the early 2000s, and in the last 5 years. But I think that's really why the front end remains such a vital part of what you're doing, regardless of the size. You know, think about it. In the back end, when you're filling prescriptions, you have very little control over most things. But in the front end, it's exciting because you have granular control. You can control the product mix. You can control the merchandising. You can control the pricing. You can make the appearance very appealing and exciting and fun. You have complete control over that. Nobody else dictates to you how you're going to manage the front end of your business. And then if you're using a point of sale solution, you have access to data that will help you manage that front end. So many people have front-end merchandise, but never look at the data to help them determine what they should be selling and what they shouldn't be selling. So you can look at what your the most profitable departments are and need to do that. Do you need to do it every day? No. Do you need to do it once a month? Probably. At least once a quarter. Certainly at least once a year. Get to know what the most profitable departments are. Virtually every POS system can tell you items that don't sell. Take a look at the movement reports and run and look at items that simply aren't selling in your pharmacy and get them out of there. It doesn't matter what size, right? Even if you have 500 SKUs, a small front end, you don't want 500 SKUs of items that aren't selling. So make sure you're looking at those reports. And then look at if you're doing inventory, which it makes sense to do, then look at how you're turning your merchandise. And most importantly, if your system can generate, what's the return on investment? So let's go and just talk about some of these numbers. So first of all, probably a number that everybody knows, gross profit. So it's basically your total sales minus your cost of goods sold. Pretty simple. The next one is gross margin, which basically is a percentage, right? So it's your gross profit divided by your total sales to get you what your gross margin is. And then inventory turns, this is the number of times you're turning your inventory in whatever period of time. So typically people talk about in a year. How many times do you turn your inventory in a year? In the back end, a lot of people tell you should be turning your inventory in the pharmacy department 12 times a year. And I think that's a great number as well. In the front end, you should be targeting that same thing. Most of you, though, are turning your inventory, according to NCPA Digest, about 1.7 times a year on the front end. And that's terrible. That's a really, really bad number. You need to be focused on improving that. And the way you do it is not to get out of the front end. The way you do it is to get out of products that don't sell and replace them with the products that do. And you can do that a lot of different ways. First, you should be carrying the top selling items in each category of the things you're carrying, but then also look to your customers for advice, things they would like you to be carrying. And no two pharmacies are the same, right? That's what's exciting about being an independent pharmacy. You're an independent business. You get to choose. If OTCs and HBA items don't sell in your front end, but dollar items do, sell dollar items. If soda and candy and snacks sell them. So that's the exciting part. You're in control. And then finally, gross margin return on investment. And the way this works is it's the amount returned on every dollar invested in your inventory. This is the magic number. This is the number that tells you everything. Now, to be able to get this number, you absolutely have to have your inventory in your system. And some of you will say, it's not worth it to me to do that. Well, it probably is worth it to you. You just don't have to do it as frequently. Do it once a quarter or once a half. Do it twice a year, and you'll get those numbers, and it'll help you make better business decisions on running the front end of your business. So, many of you have heard of the Hammacher fine line structure, and it's a great structure for a big pharmacy. It's a really great structure for a big pharmacy. For most of you, though, you don't need that overly complicated, fine level of detail. So one of the things that you can do is just simply take a look at what you carry. And so I've in many pharmacies that we work with, they're doing some over-the-counter, some HBA, some durable medical equipment, some gifts, and some seasonal. In the article, if you take the CE class, I actually take real data from one of our great customers and show you it's these exact departments and these fine lines that I'm going to talk about in a moment. And I show you the reporting and how powerful it is if you start looking at it.
So, and then from a department, you can break it down into fine lines. So in the OTC department, for instance, it could have pain relief, cough and cold, analgesics, things of that nature. HBA department, hair care, skin care, oral care, things of that nature. So that as you look at your department, you can see overperforming or underperforming fine lines, smaller groupings of product, and make business decisions based on that. And in most cases, then be able to drill down right to the items that are either struggling or doing really well. Some takeaways, things to remember, numbers that you want to be looking at. Your gross margin return on investment in the pharmacy world, and it varies by industry, but in the pharmacy world, the average is about 2.7 or higher, but it's right around the 2.7. This is a number though you want to have be higher, right? So it's for every dollar, the way that you read that is for every dollar that you invest, you get $2.7 back. So obviously the higher the better, but that's the average that you want to compare yourself to. POS data is absolutely the best. Okay, you have to be looking at that data. Your drug wholesalers are providing you some reporting and so forth, but it's only based on what they're providing you. It's not based on what you're selling. So it may have some value, but very, very little value. You need to be looking at those reports that your POS can generate for you. And then understand what's driving the numbers in making your decisions. So just because something sells, don't assume that it won't sell in your store. You need to actually look at a couple of things. One, is pricing a factor? Two, where is it being placed? What is the image? What does it look like? Is it on the bottom shelf? Is it all covered in dust? Is it in the wrong part of the store? Over the years, as I was in retail, it was always amazed me how I could take something that wasn't selling in one place in the store, move it to an end cap or move it to a better location in the store, and suddenly it starts selling. Didn't change the price, didn't do anything, just moved it. Those are the kinds of things that you'll want to look at. Remember, this is exciting. This should be fun. You are used to having to do things where you're basically not in control, but the front end of your business is where you have complete control. Go to other stores, get ideas, look around, and then there's nothing wrong with stealing ideas from other successful merchants. And that's kind of the fun part to me, using your imagination, being able to really do what you want to do in the front end of your business. And finally, I just want to tell you where that CE credit is. So if you go to ncpa.org/learn, then you'll see a bunch of CE credits, and I wrote the one on the front end in October. Okay, well, I hope that you found this useful. Remember, I'm really just trying to get you to be excited about that front end. I know many of you think it's just a big burden and doesn't really provide anything, but it has tremendous opportunity to give you thousands of dollars to the bottom line on a monthly basis, and I'm sure that will help. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Have you settled for a limited bundled-in POS because you aren't sure what's compatible with your pharmacy management system? At RMS, we've developed a revolutionary integration portal, and our state-of-the-art POS solutions integrate with over 30 pharmacy management systems. Unlock the door to powerful, cutting-edge point-of-sale functionality, no matter which pharmacy management system you want to use. At RMS, the choice is always yours.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to wish you all a very happy holiday season. Keep an eye open for the Climb newsletter coming from Karen shortly. Also, please remember to share the event, share the videos, share the podcast, share the emails. We love to have new people join us, so definitely don't hesitate to share that with friends, coworkers, constituents. In just a few moments here, Brad will be continuing the conversation on front-end reporting through the lens of the RMS system. So Brad, back over to you.
Yeah, I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday season from all of us here at RMS. We really do appreciate all of you. Thank you for hanging in there with us all year. and we hope to see you in 2022 joining us for more exciting climb events. And like Brandon said, I'll be back in just a moment, and I'm actually doing a replay of what I think is the most important video that we did, that I did last year in After Climb, looking at a deep dive into reporting and looking at your profit analysis. The perfect time of year to be doing that. Nothing really has changed on our end for that. So I'm just going to rerun that video for you in just a second. And once again, thank you all. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to After Climb, which is our opportunity to demo specific features of our POS system. Now, I'm going to keep my camera off. You already know who I am and what I look like. I'm going to keep my camera off to maximize the screen size so that it's easier to see, especially when you get to the report feature. Last month, during Climb, I actually talked about the importance of moving your inventory and getting rid of items that don't sell. Today, I'm going to be building on that a bit by showing you what I believe to be really the most important report in our system, the return on investment report. And before we get to that, I'd like to look at a couple of the concepts behind that report. So let's start by taking a look here at inventory turns. So inventory turns is a calculation you'll see on the report. It equals the cost of goods sold divided by the average inventory cost. And really that measures the number of times you sell through your inventory during the year. And as an example, if you had sales of front-end inventory of sales of $500,000 and the cost of those sales are $300,000 and your average inventory over the course of the year is $150,000, then your turns are the cost of goods, $300,000, divided by the average inventory of $150,000, which would give you 2 turns. Now, if you remember from last month when I talked about turns, the average retail pharmacy on the front end is between 2 and 4 turns per year. So we'll see some numbers here in a little bit from an actual pharmacy, and you'll be able to do a comparison. But you really want to be in that 2 to 4 and really on the upper end of that. And I think that if you're really managing your inventory, you could on the front end see 6 or better. So then let's look at the second concept, gross profit return on investment, or better referred to as GIPROI. Calculation for GIPROI is the gross profit divided by the average inventory cost. And that measures the amount returned on every dollar invested in inventory. So as an example, if your GIPROI was 300%, it means that for every dollar you invested in inventory, your return is $3. Let's look at some benchmarks here. So GIPROI varies really by retail segment, with some segments being in the 150% range. That really comes from sporting goods on the low end, to others being around 600%, the high end, and that's the grocery world where they're turning just really rapidly and moving through inventory quickly. Now, I looked to show you some ideas in the pharmacy world. We looked at 2 chains in 2019. CVS was at 220% and Walgreens reported at 330%. So if your GIPROI is in the 200 to 300 range, you're probably looking pretty good. If your GIPROI, and the important point is if your GIPROI falls below 100%, then you have an issue. And we're going to look at this report now, and I'm going to show you how to run it. And we're going to look at by department. So that just give me a sec here and we'll do that. But let me flip over here to my system, my demo system. I'm going to go to product reports, and under financial reports, you'll see the return on investment report. Now, before I go into the details of that report, I also want to point out that you have the profit analysis report. I prefer the return on investment report. The profit analysis report, they're very similar reports, have mostly the same data, use the same calculations. But the nice thing about the return on investment report, from my perspective, is that it gives you the ability to compare two different periods of time. So today I'm going to compare 2020 to 2019. Okay, so as we get into the report, the way that I teach to run this report is to start by looking at the department and looking at all of your departments, skipping your inactive items. And then also, don't go with detailed. You want a summary report. You just want to see all of your departments the first time around. And I'm going to compare, as I mentioned, January of 2020 through December of 2020 to January of 2019 to December of 2019. Now, as I said, you're going to run all your departments. My demo system, I only sell when I'm doing demos from two different departments. So just for sake of quickness, to speed this demo along, I'm just going to choose the two departments that I sell from. That'll give us a quick report, and then I'll go and show you actual data from one of our customers. Okay, so here's the details from an actual report, and I'm gonna go through the columns here just because this report's pretty simple, pretty easy to see. So we've got the different departments. I've got two departments that I'm selling from. The cost of inventory column is the current cost of inventory in your system. Okay, that's today's value. Then we have the sales comparison, January through December 2020, January, December of 2019. So you have your dollar sales, your dollar cost, your dollar profit, the percent margin. Then for the same thing for 2019. Then you have the comparison, the dollar change between 2020 and 2019, the percent change, and that's in sales. And then looking at profit, the dollar change in profit, and the percent change in profit. Now, if you're not on inventory control, all of this data that you see right now is very valuable to you still. The next columns over, you have to be on inventory control. You have to be doing on-hand quantities. But look at all the valuable information here. You can look at this report on a regular basis, I would say at least quarterly, and compare all of your departments, see departments where your margins are bad, see departments where your sales really aren't very good either. And you really have that ability to look at that and make comparisons year over year, quarter over quarter, half over half, whatever you'd like. Now, for those of you who are on inventory, or for those of you who are thinking about going on inventory, when you get to this, you get to see this is the average value of inventory over the period of time. In this case, over the course of the year. This is your average value of inventory over the course of 2020. And then your inventory turns and your GPROI. I'm not going to spend any time on this report because this isn't really good data. So let me switch over to some data from one of our customers. So I got this data. This report was ran last week, so it's very current data. And so let's take a look here. If we start at the top with analgesics, you got analgesics, antacids, so forth. We can look over here. You can see the inventory turns of 3.7 in analgesics with a GPROI of 336%. That's great. You're in the 2 to 4 range on the inventory turns. You're well into the 300% range for GPROI. And if you look further down, you get antacids, 5.4 turns, 448%. Those are really, really good numbers. Now, when you get down to baby needs, you're looking at 1.3 turns, marginal, and then the GPROI, of course, falls as well to 108%, also marginal. Could probably look at baby needs and see if there's some ways to improve that department. And you can go through the entire report looking at the good and the bad, and start to evaluate. Now, I chose to look at the very first really bad one, which is a negative GPROI. And when you look at that entire entire line item, you'll see under diet and nutritional supplements that we have a negative profit. So we see the sales and then the cost of sales significantly higher for that negative profit, which is causing that negative GPROI. So when you see something like this, then the next step is to drill down. And the way that works, I'm going to go back over, get out of this report, go back over to my return on investment report. And this time, instead of running it by department, I want to look at all of the fine lines in Department 13. So I'm going to go to fine line. I'm going to go selected fine line. I'm going to continue with the inactive items. And typically I would not run detailed at this point. I would just go and look at all of those fine lines. So I'm going to click next here. And I'm going to go down to Department 13 in the fine lines, and that's the first 2 digits of the fine line represent the department. So I can come down here and find my 13s. I'll select that first 13. Now this is a little trick in case you don't know this. You can scroll down and go to that last 13. If you hold the shift key down and then you click on that last of the 13 department, you'll get all of those will automatically get highlighted. You click add and they all get added for you. So just a little quick tip. We'll click next. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I only sell from 2 departments, Department 1 and Department 3. So when I click preview here, we're going to get nothing to print because I don't have anything that I sell in Department 13. So that's fine. Let's go ahead and go over to look at the fine line report for the store. I had them run the same report for Department 13, all the fine lines. Now, I mentioned when I run my report, I would run it not detailed. So then I would just get a summary of just the fine lines and their GPROIs. Okay. Just for sake of time, I had them run the report in a detailed fashion, which then gives you all of the items under each of the fine lines. So we'll look here and you see that for this fine line diet foods, the GPROI is 180%. For this next one down, weight control, it's 169%. So we're looking for the problem fine lines and the problem items. And here we come to fine line 1341, nutritional foods and supplements with a negative GPROI of 73%. So here's where at least one of our problems lies, is in this fine line, and we can scroll down and look and we don't see any items, at least on this page, that have a problem. So we can go to the next page, and here's where we find our problems. So then the second page under that fine line, we see we have 2 items with negative profits and negative GPROIs. So what does this mean? Well, it could be just garbage data. It could mean that you had there was a data entry error and the wrong costs were in place. Could mean that the wrong retails were in place as well, and that you actually sold this at below cost. The idea though is there is a problem. Now you can drill down into those items and you can see what the situation is and get it corrected for the future. Okay. So that's the basics of what to do. You start with the departments, you look, and then you drill down into the individual departments where you think you have a problem, and then you go all the way down to the individual items within those departments to correct those problems. And it can be a wide variety of things. And it may be that you're just absolutely overstocked in a certain department and you need to cut the inventory that you're carrying in that department so that you are turning that inventory more frequently and improving your GPROI. Okay, so I'm wrapping that up. I'm going to stick around for questions. Next month, I'll discuss inventory control and the tools that make this report more accurate and give you the ability to really fine-tune your inventory. So that'll be my focus. It'll be a deep dive next month. So if you can't stick around for questions, just know that that's what's coming up next month. And I look forward to seeing you all next month. And again, I'm going to stick around for questions now. Thanks everybody for coming.